to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Andrei Taranu, Decentralist Product Manager at dOrg. dOrg, for those who might not know, is the autonomous collective building decentralized infrastructure and applications all across the blockchain world and right here in the Tezos ecosystem. On today's stream, we'll be giving away a Tezos branded Nano Ledger to one of our lucky viewers. If you'd like that lucky viewer to be you, keep an ear out for a keyword later on during the stream. And of course, if you have any questions for Andre that you'd like me to ask, please add them in the chat at any time. We'll get to as many as we can before we wrap up. Hi, Andre. How are things in Bucharest?
Hey, it's good to be with you. Things in Bucharest are stable, predictable. It's getting warmer. People are relatively nice if you don't bother them.
Same as everywhere, I guess.
More or less.
First off, I just want to clear something up. I've always wondered. I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways. Is it dOrg or dOrg?
So you have to alternate. It's the only joke that we know for this right now. We call it interchangeable. So however feels right to you at the time when you're saying it. So both dOrg and dOrg work are acceptable ways of referring to us.
Fair. Thanks for clearing that up. To get us started, can you tell us a bit about your professional background and how you got started on your journey into the exciting world of blockchain technology?
Sure. I was born in Romania, grew up all over the country, mostly Bucharest, graduated journalism, and had like a fairly fulfilling career out of college, a 7-year career in journalism. I started as a reporter, then went into entertainment, got to produce a few things. The thing that I was trying to do is to make some sort of funny stuff on TV. YouTube wasn't a thing back then. And between 2012 and 2016, I had this transition towards tech. I was also doing like audio production, jingles for commercials, and trying to make music back then. And yeah, I transitioned towards tech because I wanted to have a startup. I had this startup that I was trying to grow. And it was only in 2016 that I got into an accelerator with it. And actually, that changed lots of the opinions that I had back then. And I realized that the stuff that I was doing as the founder for my startup is the thing that a product manager does. And it allows me to be creative and also, to get people excited about certain things. So it fulfilled the stuff that I was pursuing journalism for. So I moved into this space all the way. And since 2019, because I always need to have like a side project, I was gravitating more and more towards the decentralized space. And I started working with companies in this space, designing stuff for them. Started with UX, then got into more strategy stuff, got to design like products and campaigns for block producers on different networks, for privileged nodes. And then I got into dOrg. I think I just had my 1-year anniversary of dOrg. The reason that that I joined is to work on DAO tooling, which has kind of been the thing that I hold up as the salvation for us all. I think that was a lot of words, but that's kind of my professional journey.
That's fair. That's fair. And today you function as the decentralist product manager at dOrg. And I'm curious, why do you include the term decentralist in your title?
Well, a few reasons. You can look at this two ways. You can say that decentralist applies to the product, right? So I'm a manager of decentralized products, which does make sense, meaning that there is a difference. You could call it like a specialization almost for somebody who manages Web3 products, because they are quite different, especially when it comes to monetization strategies and pricing and packaging and all of that. So that's one way to look at it. And also, you could say that I am a product manager, which is decentralist. Like the values that I have and the orientation is geared towards decentralization. So both of these interpretations apply to why I am calling myself
Mhm.
this.
Can you speak a little bit about those decentralist values and what they represent for you?
Yeah, well, like I was touching upon a bit earlier, I have this well rooted belief that the path to many of our current problems as a society is towards decentralization, and many of the issues that we have, particularly with conflict, wouldn't exist if more of us had a say in when those decisions. So that's kind of the premise overarching my orientation towards decentralization.
Okay. And what does a decentralist product manager do exactly? Like what does your day-to-day work life look like?
Yeah, well, like I said, many of the things, many of the tasks of a just traditional product manager that is homegrown with Web 2 products and the agile workflow methodology and all of that, that stuff applies. So you still have to do customer development. You have to run experiments, research the market, like see exactly what the needs are, do competitive analysis, talk to stakeholders of all kinds, from customers to the client, if it's a project like this one where it's not like in how we're not the owners of the product. So yeah, managing the stakeholders, and then prioritizing the things that you work on, like managing the backlog, and all of that. The difference between working on a decentralized product, which is primarily the consists in the contract code and this novel thing of consensus around it, and just a normal Web 2 product, is that you cannot really rely too much on intellectual property. So that strategy where you bake a fee into the service and all of that, while that can still work, it's not really something specific of how to do business in with decentralized products. So yeah, like I said, I'm mostly using the skill set acquired in the traditional Web 2 space and have my own lens, uh, which fits the blockchain space.
Very cool. So for those who might not be super familiar with dOrg, how would you describe dOrg's role in the blockchain space in 2023?
Yeah, well, the easiest way to look at it is we are a dev shop. We are just like any other dev shop, like a development agency, full service, like full stack. You go to that agency and you say, I need an app that does this, this, and this. We are specializing in Web3 solutions. So that's one difference. And the other major difference is that we are organized as a DAO, but that doesn't really factor into the customer's experience, or it shouldn't, because we are technically interoperable with any other companies, and we are competing with other dev shops. So that shouldn't matter, although many customers, or it seems to be like a nice thing for customers to come to us. I'm not sure if they also it's like a reputation thing for them that they're working with somebody who's a DAO. But yeah, generally we offer development services, and it so happens that we are organized without central leadership. We all vote on what to do with the surplus.
Okay. And the dOrg team is actively involved here in the Tezos ecosystem via Homebase and Homebase Lite, which are key players in the DAO ecosystem here on Tezos. What can you tell us about Homebase and Homebase Lite and their role in this particular ecosystem?
Right. Well, uh, DAOs as a tool for governance on chain, it is my belief that this is the best of what the blockchain has to offer. Besides all of the other um, DeFi applications and all of the things that we can collect, I think that the primary value that is coming out of crypto in general is this ability for us to use a new and more inclusive governance mechanism. So, in that sense, what Homebase is to Tezos is basically a way to access that value that crypto has. So it's a DAO tooling framework that allows Tezos users to organize themselves using these smart contracts to make proposals, to vote, to allocate resources based on consensus. So the Homebase is like our main app, which is based on the base DAO contract. And yeah, the operating model follows the architecture of Tezos's core layer one logic. So we have these cycles, and there's a time to vote, then there's a time to wait, there's a time to execute the vote, to drop the proposal, and all of that. Um, but there's also, like you said, a home-based light, which is a almost off-chain, unconsequential way of establishing consensus, or polling is a better way of describing it. And this right now doesn't have any transfer capabilities based on the outcome of the vote, but it is a way for communities to also use the voting power of a specific, like the weight of a specific token, in order to gauge the support for some ideas that they have. So it is similar to, like, the analogous would be Snapshot on the EVM networks, like on Ethereum. And yeah, these are the two products that we are maintaining and managing, pushing forward. And they're both meant to be complementary to each other at the moment. Like, a community can have both
Okay.
main home base contract deployed, and then work on other uh, proposals with Light.
Okay. And if we can step it back a little bit here, can you explain for people who might not know exactly what a DAO is?
Yeah, sure. So a DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And, like, as a concept, this has been around for some time. We have the professional collectives, which were tried also in some communist establishments, but most notably and successfully in Spain, we have the Mondragon like corporation, which has a bunch of enterprises organized as DAOs. They're not on chain, but they still vote on who gets to lead. And there's an ongoing support for the director of a DAO that can be withdrawn at any point in time. So the concept is not new. However, the on chain DAOs, which is what we are promoting, um, have this unique characteristic that nothing can come between the will of the members and the actual allocation of the resources. So the framework has the way to enforce it as a part of itself,
Mm.
which is basically which is a tremendous advantage, especially considering how sought after governance is, and everybody fights to get it. And if there is an immutable system whereby the majority of the people won't, is provably undisputed, then yeah, that's a paradigm shift in terms of governance. So
That's
that's
really
what
interesting.
DAOs bring.
So this organization in Spain, it's been quite successful using that model.
Yes, and it's quite old. I think it's over 100 years.
It's really interesting. I understand your team has recently built out some developments in Homebase's overall UX and functionality. Can you share a bit about those developments and the roadmap for Homebase moving forward?
Yes. So um, the contracts as they've been written, Homebase is like over a year old. I don't want to be wrong here, but yeah, something like that. Definitely not more than a year and a half ago it was first launched, and it is based on this contract, which is called Base DAO. Both the contract and our app, the one that we're managing at dOrg, because we, not sure if this was made clear, but the contracts were written by a separate company, which is Circle, and we are managing the app that it interacts help allows users to interact with those contracts, basically the front end for the contracts. And the mechanism was made to, I'm not sure if the intention was to emulate the operating model of layer 1 on Tezos with the cycles, but it does have a bunch of security mechanisms, some of which might be redundant, but the thing about them is they are not very ergonomic, and the learning curve for new communities trying to get into DAOs is quite steep, needing to understand the variable quorum and the cycles. And yeah, we're making it as friendly, user friendly as possible with videos and stuff, but yeah, it still requires a little bit of effort and dedication. So the plan is to do away with all of that complexity while still preserving the security advantages that everybody is choosing DAOs for. Like I said, the fact that the consensus secures the resources, and the roadmap is very much constructed towards that, like making it easier while retaining the security advantages that the contract has now. And we're not like reinventing the wheel here. Many of the moves that we're making, we've seen them succeed in the EVM space.
Mm,
um, like we and also, our experience as a DAO has kind of shown us what works.
of course.
Yeah. So we recently developed this universal connector, we can call it, or the arbitrary contract interaction functionality for the for the contract, which means that you as a DAO can choose to add to your contract any particular piece of functionality as long as you can code it. So it has this ability that through consensus, communities are adding and attaching new pieces of capability to their contract, which may be, for example, interacting with a decentralized exchange
Mm,
when they want to move or swap some assets without passing, without breaking the trustless flow. It can be changing certain mappings on other contracts, like calling a contract and changing some data points there. Um, so there's really no limit to what you can add as the functionality. But one thing that we are using it for is to bridge light. So Homebase Lite, which
mm,
is much more ergonomic and doesn't have all of these complex features from the start. Uh, we are bridging that to the contract, and this enables execution based on the outcome of the vote. So if you still have like a binary type of proposal with accept or reject, you
mm.
can make it so that accept is tied to a transaction which happens from your uh, contract, and you can enable this with a bridge that we're building. So that's kind of um, the main thing which is on our roadmap for the next 6 months.
Very cool. So you mentioned that Homebase is approximately a year old, and I'm curious, how did your team first get involved with the Tezos ecosystem, and how has that relationship taken shape over the time that you've been involved?
I'm not sure of all the details, but from my understanding is that so the first person who started this on our side is Nestor. And my understanding is that he was working for a bunch of stuff, like a few time, like a few months. He was working on his own to get it to the MVP phase. And then once he got to proof of concept, I don't know if he pitched it to Corey, or yeah, I don't know the lore of it, but I know that it was started by Nestor, who is one of our builders, and then he stepped away around the time that I joined, so like 6 months ago.
Okay. This is great stuff so far. I'm excited to learn more. But before we get into the nitty gritty, are you ready for the world famous TezTalks lightning round?
Yeah, he told me about that. I am ready.
Just before we do that, I'd like to announce today's keyword for the Tezos branded nano ledger we're giving away today. Today's keyword is !Homebase. Enter the keyword !Homebase in the live stream chat, and Nightbot will randomly select today's winner, who will announce before the end of the stream. Okay, now, Andre, while everybody's doing that, it is lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers, and this is just for fun so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yes.
Number one, beaches or mountains?
Mountains.
Pizza or sushi?
Pizza.
Movies or video games?
Movies.
Is this real life or are we in a simulation?
We are in a simulation.
True or false? Money buys happiness.
False.
Name one thing you absolutely want to do before you die.
There's a project called AutoNet. That's what I want to do.
That's your goal, okay?
Yeah.
The last place you traveled was?
Gran Canaria.
Very nice. In 5 words or less, how would your best friend describe you?
Picky. Um, and sometimes funny. We are 4 words. Yeah.
Okay, we can go with that. And finally, what is your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Code. I like to code.
What a great answer. Excellent answers. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Let's get back into it. Now that we've talked about dOrg and Homebase, and their place in the Tezos ecosystem, I'm wondering if I can get some of your thoughts on the current state of the blockchain ecosystem as a whole. What's your outlook on the industry as we move into 2023?
Well, it's in the job description of the product manager to kind of set the strategy for the product, and for that you need to be aware of the trends in the market and look ahead. So that's how I got to justify for myself the fact that I'm watching political content, because I just say, okay, but it's relevant to my work, although that's really easy to get hooked on. But it is like our the field that we are operating in is quite unpredictable, even more unpredictable than everything else that's happening in the world. So there is, like, right now you see that ICOs as a thing are on their way to being regulated completely out of existence, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but with the level of understanding that the population currently has about blockchain and its ideological and practical advantages, it's not it's on the table. Like, a ban is still on the table. If it were to come to it, it could be enforced by nation states. So and there is this rhetoric, which is seems to be accelerating, about the fact that blockchain projects are nothing but scams, and it doesn't have anything to offer besides that. It's
Mm.
just like a scam and a pyramid type of situation, trick, a Ponzi scheme. And while and these people, like, are more and more being invited into the mainstream of media, and there isn't a consolidated response to it. Like if you say something bad about Taylor Swift, or God forbid BTS,
Mhm.
then you're going to need therapy for a few years, if you ever we would, I'm not suggesting that we as the crypto community should be as vicious, in our reply, but we don't have anybody like reaching out to people who are making the point that there's nothing to this but scams and rug pulls.
Mhm.
We're not we don't have like somebody saying, hey, listen, there is this thing about trustless and smart contracts are quite interesting, you should maybe check that out. So on that like public discourse side, I am a bit worried about that. On the long term, I'm hopeful. um
It's
I mean,
definitely
yeah.
it's definitely been interesting watching that narrative unfold over a number of years, right? And there's definitely questions that need to be asked to push back against that. Like, where is that narrative coming from? Who benefits from that narrative? What is it? What is the big issue with this technology that these people feel like they need to rail against all the time? What about the technology itself? Like, what's your vision of where blockchain tech is heading in the years ahead? What does that future look like in your mind's eye?
Well, like I said, one big part of it is consensus on and DAOs in general. Now we will see more of that manifesting on applications that previously didn't have consensus. Like even ICOs were made by selling tokens in the contract for some other token, whether it be the native token like Ethereum or some stablecoin, or that was the way it was done, and there was no governance in the contract token. It was just had have like a privileged set of wallets that would be able to transfer that, but there would be no governance on the side of the people who actually acquired the token. So yeah, it would be a multi-sig at best. So consensus towards that. Like I don't think there will be another token that will be successful without having this mechanism of governance. And then the people who are claiming value for that project would have to incrementally access it by making proposals to the community, and receiving their funding in grants rather than all at once,
Mm,
which is how it happened. So I don't think we'll see more of this opportunity to raise like series A level of money with just seed level of development, or even less.
mm.
I think that will go away. Um, and then as more and more parts of the financial and administrative establishment realize that they're on a collision course to decentralized technology, then it's going to get a little bit more interesting, and we will have pundits on both sides. And that's why I think we should be getting ready for when it gets more aggressive, because um, the way I see it, blockchain technology has intrinsic of it political ideology,
Mhm.
where politicians are optional and their support can be withdrawn at any point in time. So yeah, there is a genuine conflict of interests at the horizon.
I mean, here in the Tezos ecosystem, where governance and protocol upgrades are voted on and implemented on a regular basis. Like, we've been obviously singing the praises of our own on-chain governance model for quite a while. But can you talk about a little bit more about the importance of on-chain governments and how you'd like to see it evolve in the days ahead?
Well, the importance, um, not having wars at a time when countries are armed with world-ending weapons is the most important thing that I can mention at this point in time. So that's where I draw my inspiration from, that kind of goal. And why do I think this is even relevant in the context of DAOs? Because if there is this kind of governance at the top level of our administration, which is the territorial, it so
Mm.
happens. I mean, yeah, this is how it's been, and the territorial administration rules everything. And if more people are involved in the decision to allocate resources towards going to war, I am making the case that it will be less likely to happen, because most of these wars of aggression are not aligned, like the interests of the decision factors are not aligned with the interests of the people. So if we remove that bit, it will be more peace.
Mm.
So that's the importance. That
It would probably never happen if you actually let people have a say in whether or not those things are going to happen.
Well, you know, there is the argument that lots of people make, um, people with credentials even, that if you were to let people make such decisions on their own, maybe it would be worse, because some bad actors could engage in mass manipulation
Mm.
and all of that. But using that sort of logic, you wouldn't even let people vote, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Vote for who to have as leaders. So
And that presumes that mass manipulation isn't already happening every day, right?
yeah, it presumes that people need some sort of shepherd, because they can like decide on their own, which is already like not the best premise to start with.
So, as far as the blockchain ecosystems that are already out there, and the places where on chain governance has already taken place, what barriers do you see? What barriers to effective on chain governance right now that the larger blockchain industry needs to overcome?
Well, we definitely need to trust the main layer. So mm, now with Bitcoin, for example, that's been ironclad. That's been very stable. And even with these like cartels, these mining cartels that were centralized at the point in time, there was still like the incentive for fairness has never been like under attack, or really at risk on Bitcoin. But now on Ethereum, since the merge, there is this concern that like the US government is amassing too much staking power, and they have too many nodes, and they gain control of the network. So that's something we should not have, regardless of whether it's the US government or just somebody, a company or another country. Um, so I don't at this point really have a layer one that I would completely feel comfortable using as substrate for our main economy, like
Mm,
going all the way on chain. There's that. Um, and then you were asking what challenges we have towards this like utopic vision of migrating everything on
yeah.
chain. Well, there isn't like an architecture which has been agreed and discussed, um, and there isn't really a consolidating working group towards that. Like I participate in these discussions with Metagov, with DAOstar is like the organization. Um, the many DAOs and many companies working in this space are meeting there to come up with a standard. And let me tell you that this idea of just having DAOs as the main level, the top level, as at our administration, that's not on the table to discuss. And when bringing this up, people seem to everybody's under the impression that it's a long way in the future. And I am trying to make the case to set this in sort of like a urgency context. I think there's a urgency side to it.
Mm. Okay. Um, what are currently what are the most interesting use cases for DAOs that you've seen in operation in the wild?
Well, the one that we have, we dOrg, I mean, is quite interesting. Like we are a professional DAO, and it's not very common either. There are a few other. We have a few sister DAOs that are doing the same thing, but most of them are investment DAOs, right? So they basically get together with some resources in a treasury, and then they vote on how that would be allocated. So sort of like grants. Some of them are just straight up venture capitals, and they're organized in a DAO, and that's how they do it, which is still quite nice to see. Others would just are glorified multisigs, so they just have like a few people uh, deciding on what to do. The use case is, yeah, consensus among people, whether it's just a bunch of like three that have been doing like a NFT project together, and
Mm.
then they want to have a way for securing the profits for that, or whether it's something like us with a very complex workflow, going from client projects into our treasury, going to internal projects, having a mechanism for curating all of that, for assigning the reputation based on the work and all of that. But yeah, it's kind of there are lots of use cases.
Cool. So, what's next for dOrg? Do you have any exciting rollouts or announcements in the works at the moment?
Yeah, well, a few things. Like our declared goal is to get other companies to become DAOs, like to help companies migrate into becoming DAOs, which is something that we've been doing more of over the last year. Even with some companies, big companies coming to us willing to just try this out as a pilot on one, like a branch of their activity, not everything. But this is super cool to see, and we're getting better at this. Um, we One thing that I know that a bunch of people are excited about, and I think is also cool, is this project that we are doing with ETH Global, which is called X2 Grants. Yeah, basically we set up the system for curating and assigning grants or awards for work that has already been done. So like if somebody built a contract and it's been getting traffic and people are using it, so it's obviously something interesting or useful. But it's been mostly like a thankless work for them because they didn't get anything out of that. We designed a way to look at historical data on the chain and then award that particular developer, a grant just for the work that they did. So I think that's quite cool. Um, and apart from that, there's we are working, like I said, on, apart from helping other companies become DAOs, we are also trying to continuously optimize our workflow, and this is the testing grounds for the things that we suggest to other customers who want to also be DAOs. So we are working on internal products for DAO tooling, and also on methodologies for internal bounties. And as we test that for some time, then we make it public and show it to other people.
Very cool. Um, Sorry, I've lost my spot here. Um, what do you think blockchain's mass adoption moment will look like? Will it happen quickly, like with the advent of a killer app that everybody wants that brings masses of people into the space, or is it something that you think will happen more slowly over an extended period of time?
Well, it depends how eventful our a news cycle will be. If it is adopted very quickly, that's not a particularly good sign, because it means that, so whenever this technology was adopted quickly, it was to replace like fiat currency, which was having big issues. Like, for example, in Venezuela, they turned to Bitcoin in a very mainstream way, but that's just because they didn't have anything else to rely on. Like, their national currency was devaluing at the very mm, uh, rapid rate. So normally, unless there's a very bad economic event, the adoption is gradual. And of course, there can be other good factors for accelerating the development, like not necessarily because people wouldn't have any other way, but there are these novel use cases of integrating tokens in games, and even DAOs in games, and even some functionalities of DAOs yeah, would be accessible through games, which is something that I do see a potential in gaining adoption.
Me too.
But generally speaking, yeah, it will be gradual. It won't be like one very vertical spike.
Okay. We're almost at the end here. Before we close off, I'd like to announce the winner of today's Tezos branded Nano Ledger that we're giving away. Today's winner is our good friend, Mr. Reef Noob. Congratulations, Mr. Reef Noob. To claim your prize, just email us at social@tezoscommons.org. We'll request a screenshot for verification that you're the account owner, and then we'll get your shiny new ledger over to you just as quick as we can. For those who missed out today, we remind you there are frequently awesome giveaways to be found here on the TezTalks live stream, so keep tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks. We always love hearing from you. Andrei, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks building cool projects like Homebase and Homebase Lite here in the Tezos ecosystem, and helping keep Tezos at the forefront of the Web3 revolution. Is there anything else you'd like to mention or plug before we sign off here?
Not really, but it was, yeah, lovely to be with you, and would do it again.
Absolutely. Let's keep in touch. To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on the TezTalks live stream. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. And again, our awesome guest has been Andrei Taranu, Decentralist Product Manager at dOrg. Now let's go check out Homebase.